Hi guys, and welcome to day 6 of my 7-day Loose Floral challenge. I can't believe we're on day 6 already. This free 7-day challenge is going to teach you everything you need to know about painting loose florals in watercolour. There will be a new video every day on my YouTube channel that you can paint along with in real time, or you can come back to it at your own pace. You can also join the free Facebook group, which is linked in the description, where you can see other loose florals that people are painting and share your progress. Okay, so for day 6 we are going to be painting peonies. Now these are one of the most common requests I get for tutorials. Everyone loves peonies. Yet many of us can find them quite daunting to paint because they're such dense flowers and they have such a lot of detail and petals all crushed together in them. So for day 6 the main thing we're going to be focusing on is how to simplify complex flowers into just a few basic shapes. We're also going to be looking at more advanced colour mixing, so that's using other colours to create different mixes and variations within the shape. And then we're going to be looking at how to use a composition of leaves to frame the flower and push the eye directly into the centre. Let's get painting. Alright guys, quick supplies recap. You've heard all of this before because we're using the same supplies in all the lessons and they're in the description below. But Legion, Stonehenge, Aqua cold press, 100% cotton paper, Winsor Newton Professional paints and Princeton Heritage 40-50 round brushes. So today we are painting a peony. So this is going to be a more complex flower. It's got lots of different stroke types. We're really going to be focusing on the shape and creating colour variations. It's going to be really focusing on how to handle large busy flowers with lots going on and how to just really simplify them to their essence. So for this I'm going to be using various pinky red tones. So I'm going to mix up some Opera Rose. Opera Rose is one of those colours that's a little bit neon on its own, so it just helps to mix it up with other things. So I've got an old mixture of some Cadmium Red and some Cadmium Orange in here, so that's all mixing together to make a kind of peachy pink colour. So what we're going to start with is the centre detail. So relatively dark mix, but still plenty of water. I'm using a size 8 for this. And then we're just going to create a few central details. So what I'm doing are little loop strokes in a line. And you've got some white space in there and they all come back to a bit of a point. And then we're going to rinse that off and lighten up the colour value a bit by adding a bit more pink. And then over the top we're going to point the brush back to the centre and then lift that up and pull it back around to create some more loops above there. These are bigger and lighter than the previous ones. And then what we're going to do is connect them there, start allowing that pigment to move between them. You really want to be keeping this loose and expressive, so one of my top tips is to hold the brush slightly further up. Don't hold it kind of very close to the centre like that, you want to hold it further up. So it means that you get much more used to using your whole arm rather than just your little fingers to move it around. Sticking with the light value but maybe adding a bit more red, we're going to do the side petals. So these ones come up and round like that, and then the same again on that side. You can see that we're using quite a bit of white space in here just to help keep everything together. And next we want to add some couple of light petals here. These are going to be foreshortened, so they're going to be closer to the viewer, so they're more kind of oval shapes. And then we're going to start mixing up the colours. We're going to add some red and come down this way, and then in the next one we're going to add more pink, come down here. And what we're doing is starting the brush at the centre and pulling away all the time. So whether we're pulling down or up or to the side, we're starting at the centre and then going out. I'm going to go back in and add some colour variations to these. go back and darken those first ones as well. I'm also going to add some little flicky details to give a bit more of a focal point there. Enlarge them where we can connect. Okay, now the big one down here. You can see I'm just putting the tip of my brush and then pressing and swooping around, using plenty of water there to change up the value. A bit more paint on that, creating rounded bottoms. And pick up a little puddle there. If you get a bit of a puddle, you can just use your brush, dab it off on a bit of kitchen roll, and then come back in and pick that up. And a nice pink one over there. What I'm going to do is just go in and darken up some of those central bits. And allow it to spread out. Okay, I quite like how this is looking, but I can see a couple of bits that are maybe too dark, that I'm going to go back in and pick some of the paint up. That one and maybe that one. We want to create a really good variation in values, and so we want to be kind of looking for any areas where they're all a similar mid colour, and then either adding more paint or picking some of it up to create light areas. So I quite like how this is looking. I still think the centre could be a little bit darker, so I'm going to go back in with a bit of pure red and just touch that about in a few places just to let it darken. It's going to spread out quite nicely. Okay, then what we're going to do is create the stem and leaves. So over to trusty sap green for this. We're going to curve the stem back around that way. So imagine that that's the centre, and then pull out of the stem that way. I'm going to touch it there for a little bleed. And then what we're going to do is do long thin leaves, and what I'm going to do is curve them up to meet the flower. It's a really good way to frame a single flower like that. So if we get a nice green mix, we're going to do a long thin stroke. So pull a little stem out and then press and drag and pull it up. And then we're going to do the other half there, leaving a highlight. I'm going to go back in with a bit of darker paint. Maybe do the underside of that to frame it a bit. And then starting from a different point on the stem, I'm going to do the same thing in the other direction. So pull that up and round, and then do the underneath bit and come up. I'm going to curve that into the flower again. So can you see how these are framing the flower and directing the composition back to the flower centre? I'm just going to add some darker values in there. If it dries out a bit like that, you can just paint over it again with a wet brush. That looks great. So just while I'm watching this dry, I can see that that dark red colour is not spreading as well as I want to. It's creating these little crackly veins. So I'm going to go in with just a damp brush and just go back over some of those areas and smooth it all back out. Okay. Now, one of my top tips for painting quite complex flowers like this is to use a reference photo. It's really common when we're painting from life that we try and kind of render all the details, and it's because we're looking at something that's three-dimensional. Just going to add some darker values in here while I'm talking to you. It's because we're looking at something that's three-dimensional and trying to make it two-dimensional, and that kind of confuses our brains. So if you're looking at a reference photo, it's already two-dimensional, and that can make it easier to interpret on a piece of paper. So for flowers that are quite busy and complex and have a lot going on, using a reference photo is a really good way to bring that kind of vision that you see onto the paper. So that's my top tip for today. Okay, the peony's done. Okay, so there we have it, a loose peony in watercolour. To recap for day 6, we've been focusing on simplifying complex flowers into just some basic shapes. We've also looked at some more advanced colour mixing and adding other colours to create variations and interest. And then finally, we've learned a leaf composition trick, using those leaves to just frame and point up to and drive the viewer towards looking back at the flower. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to share your work in the Facebook group. I'd love to see what you're creating. And come back tomorrow and paint with me for the final day.